Welcome to The Faithful Steward. This is a podcast all about sharing biblical wisdom and practical insights in order to help church leaders pursue and teach financial freedom as part of Christian discipleship. We believe this is a spiritual conversation, and this is a place where the church needs to lead the way in order to move our communities forward in how we steward God's resources. I'm your host, James Lenhoff, and I am so passionate about this conversation and helping leaders have the confidence to step into it. We believe that if we help people thrive financially and grow spiritually, it changes everything. And I am so excited to join you on this journey. This podcast is brought to you by Good Sense. If you'd like more information about what we're up to, you can go to our website at goodsensemovement.org. All right, let's get started with today's conversation. Last month, we talked about this three-lane idea, these different audiences that we are communicating with when we talk about money. And we talked about lane 1 and 2, this idea of the people who are in trouble and they know it, and people who are in trouble and they don't know it. And today I want to talk about lane 3. These are the people in our community that are not in trouble. They do really well with their resources. They are building their net worth. They are accumulating and saving well. They're managing their debt really well. They tend to not engage in the money conversation often because they feel like they got it down. They're really good at it. And so it's a really difficult topic to bring up and to really engage in with this lane 3 group because they don't feel the need to have that conversation inside the church. They think they don't really have anything to learn there. And a lot of times, these are individuals who are making really good income. They are what we, in many cases, would call a relentless earner, and that they work really hard. They're creating a lot of income, and they haven't really drawn a line in their time management. They are what may be termed as a workaholic. They're career focused. They're advancing really quickly. Or maybe they're on the other side of their career and they've accumulated a large amount of money. But what I want to make sure we hear in this is that lane 3 is not just wealthy people. It certainly includes people who are wealthy and that have done really well in their financial management, but it also includes people who are on their way to that place. They are saving really, really aggressively. They are building their net worth, even if they're young. Lane 3 individuals are really important for us to engage with because they are on a path that leads to an identity that's rooted in their resources. They see, in many cases, their security, their significance, their status being rooted in their wealth. They see their career as their source of identity and status. They see the house that they live in, the car that they drive, the stuff that they have can be something that feeds into their identity, and they get sucked into a lot of this tendency to keep up with the Joneses, but they're also many times hoarding and oversaving, and that's a really different conversation than what we have in lane 1 and 2, which is why talking about money is so hard. We're talking to 3 very different audiences. But in lane 3, what we really want to call attention to is legacy. What's the point of all of this? What are we aiming at? What's the impact that we're trying to make? Many of the lane 3 individuals and families may be giving at that tithe, that 10% kind of biblical standard. But what I would argue is, why not go further? Why not go beyond that 10% level? Why not push past that threshold? We don't want to do the minimum. We want to honor God to the maximum. And so that doesn't mean that we don't enjoy and we don't have shared experiences and we don't invest in the life that we're leading with our families. But it does mean that we have intentionality behind it, that we're making decisions ahead of time. We're choosing what we're going to do with God's resources with some awareness that there should be a limit to what we use it for our own benefit. There should be a line. And we talk about this in lane 2, this idea of a lifestyle cap, but it's really important in that lane 3 category because they could theoretically spend well beyond what a lane 2 family might be able to afford and still be okay. Now, they tend to be pretty self-restrictive. They tend to deny themselves on average, and that's how they end up accumulating wealth. If you just spend all the money that you have, you don't actually accumulate anything other than a bunch of stuff. And so there already is a tendency to put some of those lines in place. But for a lane 3 family, the opportunity to decide ahead of time what satisfaction and contentment look like actually creates a margin that is really robust, an opportunity to give aggressively, push past some of these thresholds, and really make a big, lasting impact on the kingdom. And so there is a beauty for these families to engage in that work. There's also a constant pressure to keep giving more. And so one of the things that's really interesting in the conversations with lane 3 families is this awareness that they are getting hit from several different sides and asked for more and more resources. And so a lot of times they'll shrink back, they'll hide themselves because they just don't want to have that conversation. What I have found is the most enjoyable conversation with these families is to move them away from this sense of discipline or you have to or you should give. And we actually start from the other direction. What breaks your heart? I believe there is something in all of our hearts that aligns with the Father's heart. And what breaks my heart the most might be different than what breaks your heart the most. And that's okay. That's a beautiful thing. That's by design. And so I think what God is calling us to is to respond to that specific need that is out there in the world that He has placed a heart for in our person, in our family. What are we passionate about? And then we ask the question, so what's the problem that we're passionate about? What breaks our heart? Now, who's fixing that problem? What organizations are trying to make a dent in that problem? And then what do those organizations need? And so if we move in a direction of legacy, we're asking the person who has a unique heart cry to tie their generosity to the things that break their heart. And we don't need to then guilt or shame them into giving. They feel compelled. The question changes from how much should I give to how much can I give? When we open their eyes to the opportunity that lies in front of them to make an impact, to have a legacy of impact, they start to get excited about what it could mean, not just for them as they join in the joy of generosity, but also for their family to be part of that experience and that adventure together. It becomes a shared adventure as a family to be making an impact in these things that matter to them. So if you are in a situation where you are having opportunities for conversations with families that are in that lane 3 category, I would encourage you to not shy away. I would encourage you to not feel like it's not your place. If you are in a leadership position in your church, if you are leading the conversation around money in your church, or a stewardship pastor, or whatever the case may be, this is an audience that needs us. This is a place where we can actually move the needle for the kingdom and awaken in them something really unique. We don't want to be approaching for building campaigns and, more and more asks. The more exciting conversation is about how we can partner with these families to uncover what God has uniquely placed in them and then activate it. When we help lane 3 families catch a vision, what I have found is they become less self-interested in terms of hoarding and protecting. They start to put lines in place that allow that margin to feel more free to give. They don't have this sense that more is always better. We need to get to a place in lane 3 where we recognize enough is enough. And that needs to start early. If we catch some of these families who are young and they're over accumulating, they miss all the years where they could have been partnering with the Lord and what He was up to. They could have been part of the kingdom work all along, but they were convinced that just saving it would be better. And so helping them get to a place where they decide intentionally this is an adequate amount of saving. This is enough. This prepares me for future obedience, and I've decided ahead of time what I'm going to spend, and so this is what's left. Give it. Start early. Start younger in that experience of generosity, because generosity is a discipline that needs to begin when we're young, not wait until we get to a place where we're convinced we have more than we need. That takes too long, and more often than not, it never happens. And so this is a conversation I believe the church needs to lead, but it needs to lead it open-handedly. We need to be leading in this conversation by saying, this is who you are, this is who God made you to be, and this abundance that you are managing can be shared in ways that impact the stuff you care about, that God has asked you to care about, rather than only approaching these families when we have a campaign or a thing we're trying to do or something we're asking them for. It is so much more exciting, but it's also safer for that family if we engage with them in a time where we're not just asking them for money. That's happening too often for a lot of these families. And so we want to awaken them to a longer-term vision, a generational impact. What could this mean for the kingdom if we start that generosity now, wherever you are, whether you're in your 30s and you're an early career and you're just building and growing your net worth aggressively, or you're in your 70s and you've already done all that and you wish you had been more generous along the way. It doesn't matter where these families are. This conversation is life-giving. And it is something we should step into with confidence and joy, not something to run away from or avoid or think it's not our place. It absolutely is. The church needs to be talking to all three of these audiences about money. We need to lead this conversation, but it is nuanced and it's complicated and it's hard to do in mass because we're talking to very different people in very different circumstances, but we have a role to play for all three. And it's time for the church to step into that role and lead this conversation with confidence and with direction to call all of these families to faithful stewardship, no matter how that applies to their specific life circumstance. Well, thank you so much for listening to the Faithful Steward podcast. Be sure to check out the show notes for links and other information that we mentioned in today's episode. Also, be sure to check out our website at goodsensemovement.org to get all the resources we offer churches to help equip them in teaching financial stewardship to their community. If you have any questions or any topics you want to make sure we cover on our show, you can email me at jameslenhoff@goodsensemovement.org. I'd love to hear from you.